Hey guys, welcome back to the Retro Horror Academy. My name's Daniel Richardson, and today we're going to be looking at the year in horror 1934. So you guys know how we go. We got six, which is crazy because these last couple of shows we've had 10 more. I mean, my gosh. So the fact we kind of dropped down the six, kind of crazy. But we're going to rank six horror films from 1934, as well as have two inductees into the Horror Hall of Fame. That's right. The first time ever we're going to have more than one induction. We're going to have two. So let's get into it, guys. 1934 was the year that the word horror became the official title of the genre. Up until this point, they were just called like horrific films or dark dramas. However, or they got kind of lumped in with like fantasy or whatever. But this is the first time that there's like, nope, this is the exact genre title, horror. Such a good feeling. Such a good feeling. We're finally at that stage now where these are now horror films. However, with this notoriety also came some scrutiny. This is when the censors really started to, kind of tighten up. They've been doing it for a while anyways, but this is where we're going to really start feeling it. Maybe not so much with this year, or with this film, or this year's releases, but definitely with the post-release building up to next year when the Hays Code becomes a thing. So, all right, so as I mentioned, we've got two Horror Hall of Fame inductees, so let's get into it. The very first one, it's an actor by the name of John Barrymore. Of course, he's from the Barrymore acting family. He's a relative of I think it's the grandfather of either him or Lionel is the grandfather of Drew Barrymore. But either way, the Barrymore acting family. He's best known for his roles as like Svengali. He was Sherlock Holmes. But I think to us horror fans, this guy is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And for me personally, of course, right behind Frederick March, I would say that he's my favorite. I mean, up until, I would say definitely the silent era, because there's so many Jekyll and Hydes from the silent era that I would say he's definitely my favorite from the silent era. So, but yeah, John Barrymore secures his place in the Horror Hall of Fame. So congratulations. And I'm going to butcher this dude's last name. And I hate that because I really love this actor. The second person to be inducted into the Horror Hall of Fame, Conrad Vertit. I'm sorry, Conrad. I think, on a larger scale, outside the world of horror, he's always going to be remembered for his role in Casablanca. However, to us horror fans, especially on this show, with all the movies we've reviewed with him in it, he was in movies such as Eerie Tales, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, The Hands of Orlok, Waxworks, The Student of Prague, and The Man Who Laughs. I mean, this guy is a horror legend. Scratch that. Horror icon. Yeah, he just had a look to him. Especially, like I mentioned it, Waxworks, The Student of Prague, even The Man Who Laughs, which is more sympathetic, but he still looks creepy. I mean, so creepy, in fact, that's where they got the inspiration for the Joker. So, anyways, we inducted a director last time that frequently worked with him in Fritz Lang, and so it's kind of good to kind of pair him up now. So he now joins him and others in the Horror Hall of Fame. So there you have it, John Barrymore, Conrad Vert, both of them well deserved to be in the Horror Hall of Fame. So guys, let's get into it. We got six films to talk about, six films to rank. These are the six films from horror films from 1934. We're going to start off with number six. I'm talking about Chloe, Love is Calling You. The basic story here is that there's a woman, this black woman from the South, who basically blames this white plantation owner for the murder of her husband. And so she's coming back to get revenge. And that's the gist of it. There's more to it, other than that. But we'll get to that, here in a bit. So this movie was really kind of hit hard by the censor boards. They literally, because of the Not and oddly enough, they didn't. At least from what I read, it wasn't due to any like the racial nature here. Which honestly, there was. It's a lot of racism layered in through this movie, and you can say it's a time or a sign of the times or whatever, but it's kind of hard to justify that. It's just bad regardless. And that's weird because there's another movie on here that dealt with the same thing, and they did cite that at the time it was kind of a racial insensitivity. They didn't use those words obviously, but it's what it is, racial insensitivity. But anyways, mostly the voodoo stuff, that was, again, anything blasphemous or against God in these early days, that was a big no-no. And so, of course, the fact that this is, dealing with voodoo, that is, a big, whatever that. So, with this movie, and I guess I should go more to the production, I guess, before I get into my review of it. This was actually filmed down in Florida, where I guess at the time they were trying to make Florida to be like the next big Hollywood. I don't know what the reason behind that was, but they were trying to make this new Hollywood. This and two other films were shot all at the same time, and it got a lot of press release and everything because of that. However, as we know, it didn't come close to it. I don't think any state really, with the exception of maybe New York, became like the second filming place of for Hollywood, with the exception of maybe I guess now Atlanta, but I don't know. Florida was not it, and it wasn't happening for them. This movie had a very bad troubled production, and like I said, oh no, I haven't said this yet. Sorry. The main girl who played Chloe, her name was Olive Borden. This was her last film. She was shortly passed away, shortly after this. So I kind of feel bad for this movie because honestly, it's not the movie's fault completely. But the version I saw was a very bad copy. Like, the audio was really muffled and the picture wasn't good. But even with that said, with the scenes that you could hear kind of clearly and everything, this acting was really bad. Like, I don't know. It's one of those things where, like, you can argue, like, this is 1934, but we're 2-3 years removed from, like, Dracula and Frankenstein and like other well-made movies. So like I'm not using that as an excuse. Like there is no excuse at this point. A bad movie, bad acting's bad acting no matter, what. We've already seen some good acting. So it's like, no. And this was just, I don't know. And I mean, it could be some of the script. It's just, I don't know. A lot of the delivery was bad. The direction was really bad. Like, I don't know, scenes would just kind of linger on and then they just abruptly cut. And again, I'm not sure how much of this is just, this movie trying to survive, I guess, the sand of the time, and maybe during, over the course of all this, maybe a lot of things have happened to it. But either way, this movie, I don't know, it was just poorly made. The storyline itself, I don't know. Like I said, it felt more boring. This movie is definitely more of a drama, I guess, a melodrama than horror. I guess really the only horror elements is the voodoo and the fact they do try to sacrifice her at the end. But and like I said, I don't know, the story I wasn't big on it about midway through. It does kind of get interesting when you find out, like, because the thing is, it's a white girl. This girl is white, and they're trying to like play it off. Because the thing is, like, in the beginning of the movie, you're told that her parents are black, and it's like, but she's clearly white, and like even like the other racist white women in this movie are just like, well, look how dark she is. It's like she's not dark at all. Now we find out later in the movie that she's actually the daughter of the plantation owner that her black mother is trying to kill and get revenge on. And so it's just like, yeah, she's white. Like there is no, I don't know. It was just ridiculous. And again, it comes off so racist. I couldn't tell if they were actually using. I think they did. I think I read they used African Americans to actually film this. But I swear, one guy looked like he was a white dude doing blackface. And I can't confirm that. And I haven't read anything on that. So maybe he's just really dark. But either way, just kind of the undercurrent of racism in this thing was just kind of off-putting. And again, I mean, I'm not trying to be all, fucking PC or anything like that. Like I said, if the racism supports the story, I'm all for it. American History X is fucking awesome. It's a great movie, and it tells a good message. Here is just clearly like, no, they're just racist. Just racist pricks for the sake of being racist pricks. So, anyways, Chloe, Love is Calling You. Also just called Chloe, but that's the full title. This thing has an IMDb score of 3.5, and yeah, I kind of gotta agree with the general public on this one. This one wasn't that great. So yeah, Chloe, Love is Calling You, number 6. At number 5, see if I can say this right, El Fantasma del Convento, uh, translated to The Ghost of the Convent. Of course, it was released here in America as The Phantom of the Convent. Anyways, this is a Spanish, or sorry, Mexican, Spanish language, but Mexican horror film. Basic plot of this is it's this guy, his best friend, and the best friend's wife. They're kind of lost in the woods, and they get taken into this monastery, or a convent, I guess. They call it a monastery in the movie, but they get taken into there, and they start experiencing some weird stuff, and you start realizing that maybe these monks that are in this monastery may not be alive. We don't know. So for this one, the director was a guy named Fernando del, and I'm going to butcher this dude's last name, Fernando del Futis. But he directed that La La Lorna that we reviewed a little bit back. And that was a huge film in Mexican cinema at the time. Excuse me. And made a lot of money. And they were just trying to capitalize not just on the success of that and, this director, but they was also trying to capitalize on just horror movies in general at this time. Horror was doing not just big business, in America, but also across the border as well. So they went ahead and made this film, and a lot of people will talk about how just great the atmosphere is. This was another huge hit in Mexico. However, it was not released in the U.S. La La Lorna was, but this one was not for some reason. So it didn't do much money up here, or no money up here. But however, in recent times, with the release of the Blu-ray, I guess, more current contemporary, or I guess retroactively critics, contemporaries, the ones from the time. So yeah, the people have been retroactively reviewing this, and it's been getting a lot of praise, and for good reason, because this movie is pretty solid. Has a has a 6.9 on IMDb. I'm jumping ahead of myself here. Let me tell you what I thought of this movie. I was actually surprised. I don't know what to expect. A lot of these movies I'm watching for the first time. I'm going into them blind. I'm not, checking them out beforehand, read anything up about them. I want to go into it blind. And so when I started watching this initially, I don't know. I was kind of bored. I didn't know what to expect. But almost instantly, and I'm talking within like the first 5 minutes or so, when they encounter this stranger and he brings them into the monastery, my ears perked up. I was definitely more now intrigued by what was going on. It reminds me like an old Twilight Zone episode, and it's a short film. It's only like an hour and something minutes long. No, actually it's 50 something minutes long. It's short either way. It's not a long movie, but it does kind of feel like a Twilight Zone episode. And I don't know, really dug it. It is definitely heavy handed with this religious morality, which I don't know. Younger Daniel was always kind of against these morality tales. As I get older, I guess because I don't take religion that seriously anymore. Like before, I was a hardcore atheist, and now I'm just kind of like I don't fucking care about religion, period. So it don't bother me as much. You can kind of just embrace the story for what it is, and I really like the story. I like the tale it tells here. This thing has a 6.9 on IMDb. I think this deserves to be higher. In fact, on a personal level, this is my number one horror film of 1934. The Academy, of course, saw otherwise, and I was promptly outvoted on this thing. But on a personal level, think it's much better. So, that is El Fantasma del Convento. At number 4, we have Black Moon. Black Moon is about this young girl whose parents are killed on this island. They said what the island was. I forgot what it's called. Doesn't matter. And so, anyways, San Francisco, is that it? Either way, it doesn't matter. Sorry. So the only people that survive is her and her nanny. And so, anyways, years later, she decides to go back for whatever fucking reason. She feels like there's something calling her there, and so she, ends up going back and everything. This is based on a book, actually. Never read it myself, but based on a book. And the studio, this is Columbia Pictures. they went ahead and got director Roy William Neal, who is at this point was a veteran film director. He's been directing movies since like I don't know the 19 noughts. He was doing silent films and everything, and he would actually go on and become a big deal with Columbia Pictures. And then of course they actually went ahead and got Jack Holt to be the star of this thing, and he was a big deal for Columbia at that time. You know, one of their leading stars and everything. This movie didn't get the best reviews. It was kind of hit or miss. This one, as I mentioned with Chloe Love is Calling You, this was getting a lot of criticism for its racial insensitivity, even at its time in 1934. So we got like separate water fountains, but people were just like, "Hey, wait a minute, you're not portraying these people as people in this movie." And I mean, I gotta agree, it really is like it's just so just over the top racist at times. Again, though, I mean, it's not an excuse, but it's a product of its time, and it is what it is. However, the racist parts weren't even what upset the censors. They were more upset about voodoo because, again, anything anti-Christian is just not good in the eyes of these censors. This kind of developed a subgenre of horror known as Tropic Terror, which would kind of go on to become just known as voodoo horror. But at this time, just Tropic Terror. Any movie that kind of took place in the jungles, usually dealing with black protagonists, or sorry, antagonists, and dealt with foreign countries or islands or whatever, kind of fell into this Tropic Terror subgenre, which I've seen many of these, and we're actually gonna be hitting. I mean, the heart of this is coming up. Like there's gonna be a lot of them from the 30s and 40s up into the 50s, and you see them a little bit from there on out. But again, I think they kind of moved away from Tropic Terror to just voodoo or cannibal or zombies. I mean, so that's these would kind of take place in other subgenres as well. For me personally, I don't know. It starts off really bad and boring. And that's the thing. This, with the exception of El Fantasma del Convento, I think a lot of these films from this year just weren't that great. And this movie, to me, I mean, I don't know, this may have been maybe my second favorite from this list, but honestly, it's not saying much. Like I said, it starts off really bad, and I don't know. I felt like Faye Ray was just kind of wasted in this movie. It just felt like the fact that they have the main girl, the one who was born down there and is rescued, and then she goes back down there. She's for lack of a better term, and I don't mean it this way, but she's being kind of driven to the dark side. Or lured to the dark side, I should say. And so it's almost like they wanted Faye Ray to be there just to be the main guy's rebound, I guess, is the best way to kind of describe that. Yeah, I don't know. It just kind of, it is what it is. However, when I kind of getting into this thing was a little bit later on in the film where they're all kind of trapped in this house. 'Cause at this point, the natives are getting together with the help of this woman who, again, her child is there, her husband's there, and she pretty much turns her back on her family to kind of align with the voodoo cult or whatever. And so, anyways, at this point, our protagonists, the good guys, they're trapped in this in the fortress or the house or the building or whatever you want to call it. And at that point, the movie started getting better for me. Like I like those confined horror films. I like when people are trapped and have to try to find a way out and whatever. And there's some kind of evil force outside, whether it's humans, zombies, monsters, whatever. I like those kind of movies. And so, anyways, with that being said, I don't know. I definitely dug that part of it. So it does get better as the movie goes on. It's just I don't know. It's getting there. That's the problem right there. So, anyways, this film has a 6.0 on IMDb. That's too generous in my opinion. I think goes down a little bit more, but anyway, that's just my opinion. But that's Black Moon. So, at number 3, and winner of the Bronze Skull Award, The Telltale Heart. In this one, this guy is kind of driven insane as he's taking care of this old man, and he just keeps fixating on his diseased eye. and of course it drives him to something dark. Uh, yeah. So this movie is the first has a distinction of being the first talkie to cover a telltale heart, which has been covered, several times before in short films. It was done in long form with an American Conscience, uh, which was a D.W. Griffith's film. So, but this is the first time, those were silent. This is the first time that we got a talkie out of this one. When this was released as Bucket of Blood here in America, which I think there's another movie, if I'm not mistaken, that came out later on called A Bucket of Blood, but it was called A Bucket of Blood. This is just Bucket of Blood. So, when this game came out, the critics were kind of divided on this thing. Uh, some people liked it. Some people thought it was too gruesome. In fact, it was too gruesome that a lot of UK cinemas, not even here in America, but over in the UK, pulled it from from the theaters and everything. But the biggest thing here was the lack of dialogue. This was a talkie film, yet there wasn't a lot of talking in it. So a lot of people kind of felt that it was boring. I'm gonna agree. I was not big on this film at all, and just found it more dull than anything else. Again, it has a 6.1 on IMDb, which is like, what? But I don't know. Anyways, I think it's definitely being too generous for this thing. Yeah, but that's a telltale heart. Moving on now to number two, and the winner of the old Silver Skull Award. We're talking about The Black Cat. The Black Cat, it follows this couple who recently got married. They're on their honeymoon, and they're going to Hungary. However, there is an accident that happens, and they are taken into this mansion, it's owned by this Satan worshiping cult leader. As he tries to tend to her wounds and everything. So the biggest thing here uh, is that this is the very first of 8 pairings that we would see between Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi. And that's huge. I can't understate that enough. And especially for its time, that was fucking huge. Because you're seeing Frankenstein's monster and Dracula in the same movie, or at least the actors that portrayed them. And so that was what this whole movie was kind of banking on, was the fact that, hey, it's Boris Karloff, it's Bela Lugosi, first time they're, in a movie together. Uh, Based on an Edgar Allan Poe story, although from what I heard, it has very little to do with the actual story itself. I've never read it, so I couldn't tell you, what they changed or what they, did, whatever. But yeah, this was the first time that, these two team up, and they got a heavy hitter writer, or some source material at least, that, base this thing off of. This thing was also one of the first few movies to utilize score throughout its film. Up till this point, a lot of time, the only score you really ever heard was opening credits and closing credits, and then occasionally they put some music here and there. But this is the first time that we get music throughout, so kind of a big turning point there as far as scores being talked about. This is also one of the first movies to ever have a satanic cult. We've had movies that deal with the devil in the past. In fact, the very first horror film deals with Satan, but this is the first time that we actually have Satan worshippers, on the big screen. So that's kind of the big thing there. This movie, it's funny because there's a scene that's very controversial that a lot of people had problems with. And I didn't even realize that's what they were doing in this movie, I guess, because that's just, I don't know. I didn't realize what was happening. There's a scene where Bela Lugosi, he finally has Karloff, tied up, and he starts skinning him alive. I thought he was just whipping him, because the camera does kind of tilt to the side, and we see shadow. You don't actually see him, being skinned alive, obviously. It's all, what you think you see, but I didn't even see that. I honestly thought he was just whipping him, and it was just kind of bad photography, but I guess that's more on me than anything else. This would be the biggest movie for Universal in 1934. So, I mean, there you go. Not even one of the Universal monster movies, and it's still, kicking ass and everything. The only other note about this, as far as the production goes, and I thought it was kind of interesting, was the director, uh, Elmer, Elmer? I don't know. It's something like that. He's got a weird name. Apparently, though, so he was having an affair with this woman. The woman happened to be married to the studio head's nephew. And so this spilled out, and I guess it became a big scandal at the time. And so they decided to just kind of grin and bear it, get the movie made, and then as soon as the movie was finished, this director was blackballed from every major studio. It didn't hurt him too much. He would go on to direct a lot of independent films, and continue to work the rest of his life, or at least work rest of his working life. So it didn't hurt him too bad. But I'm sure it definitely wasn't getting paid as much as he would have been working in a studio system. But how fucked up is that? I mean, I get like Universal kicking you out, but to be blackballed from everywhere, I don't know. That seems kind of shitty right there. But hey, that's what Hollywood does. They band together and they fuck you over. So for me personally, I was really excited to see this. I've seen one other Karloff and Lugosi pairing. I don't remember what it is, but I do remember seeing it later on down the road. It wasn't this one though. But anyways, so I really liked the other movie, so I was looking forward to this one, and this just came off again dull and boring. I couldn't get into it. The whole plot just seemed weird. The whole he's got all these different women like in suspended animation or preserved. I don't know what the fuck's going on, but he's got them all like down in his basement. It's just like, why? And then, he has a current wife. Does she not know about this? She has to know something about it because she's in the cult we see later on. I don't know. There's a lot of that going on, and it just seemed like, I don't know, the characters were kind of stupid. The woman who, she resembles Lugosi's ex-wife and I guess Karloff's, former wife as well because he was fucking her as well. The main girl resembles her, and so they're all like, oh, she looks like her. And she looks like she's maybe possessed at one point, like she wakes up in the middle of the night and just acting strange. But that's never brought up again. I guess maybe her head wound. I don't know. That I didn't like. I didn't like the fact that Lugosi's trying to get his revenge on Karloff, and it's just, I don't know. He's going about it very weird. And he's got his butler who's pretending to be Karloff's butler, but Karloff doesn't think that's weird. That they show up together. I just figured, like, you hired your new butler and he shows up with your mortal enemy. I'm going to think, like, you know what, you guys are probably working in cahoots. And they were, but the main guy and the main girl could have left at any time, and they fucking don't until it's too late. Now, that's not major. I mean, that happens in a lot of horror movies, I guess, but at this point, I'm just kind of irritated with this movie, and I just was just kind of stoned out of it. How does the fucking Lugosi's daughter / Karloff's wife die? Like, at one point, when they're about to sacrifice the main girl, she just screams and faints, and then the next thing we see, she's preserved. And that was like minutes later. Like, literally 2 or 3 scenes later, we just see her like down there on the slab, like she's going to be preserved. And it's just like, what? I don't know. I wasn't huge on this, and I do love the fact that like the main guy, because like I should mention, Lugosi's the good guy in this one. Karloff's the bad guy. But the main guy, who's the good guy, he shoots Lugosi. And then Lugosi's just like, it's okay, just get out of here. And it's like, it's okay, you just got shot by this dude. I guess, the fact that he turns to the dark side, starts skinning Karloff alive and taking pleasure in the revenge means he's a bad guy and his death is okay. I didn't like the ending with the little chuckles and shit, like, oh, the place blew up, and it's like, he writes a story about it, and they're just like, nope, no one's ever going to believe this. I don't know, it's just, I wasn't big on this movie. I really wasn't. The only thing I took away from this movie that I kind of liked was it was just kind of funny to see how I didn't really realize this before, although I should have, that a lot of these movies from this era, whoever the main protagonist is, a male protagonist, it's like no one cares about him, and he's kind of lost in the shuffle even when it comes to marketing, because more often than not, whoever your antagonists are, or your horror icons are, they always get top billing. Whether it's Karloff, Lugosi, Atwill, these guys are always going to get, Chaney, they're always going to get the top billing. And then like the square-jawed, good guy, white, meat, baby face is just kind of like left in the dirt. When it comes, and again, the females will even get the higher billing because like, oh yeah, she's the scream queen, she's the, the damsel in distress here. But the good guy, who is just, and again, we'll usually have more scenes, and its story will always kind of focus around him and his, love interest. But I don't know, it kind of gets left off the poster, and it's so true because I ain't gonna lie, I don't remember any of these good guys hardly, and they're all the same. They're all just the same. Oh, come on now, darling, we'll find a way out of this. Like they all, I don't know. It's funny. That's the only thing I take from this movie. But yeah, Black Cat was not a fan of. Was not a fan of at all. So that means we have one. Oh, I should mention that Black Cat had a 6.9 on IMDb, had an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it actually made over 200,000. And I don't know what 200,000 was back in 1934 dollars, but I'm sure it's pretty fucking good. So, yeah, The Black Cat. So we move on now to the number one horror film of 1934, winner of the Golden Skull Award. The movie is Maniac. Maniac, also kind of loosely based on Edgar Allan Poe's The Black Cat, and a little bit of murders in the Rue Morgue. It's a guy who basically, he's a mad scientist who, this guy helps out this mad scientist in trying to reanimate dead bodies. However, he goes crazy in the process. So this is considered to be one of those early worst films of all time. Why it's number one, I have no clue. The Academy has lost their mind. Because, this shouldn't even be in the top three. Maybe top three. No, Black Cat was better than this. Either way. But, a lot of people have kind of pointed back to this as being like, one of the worst films of all time. It was directed by independent filmmaker Dwayne Espers, who would go on to, just make more and more. And I recognize the name, but I don't recognize what else he's done. I didn't look it up. I'll be surprised, I guess, as I watch more and more of his films as they come. But I guess he's always been kind of known to be making these bad movies. But he's kind of like, Ed Wood from a few years later. And he would always just have scantily clad women in his movie. In fact, in this film, we get some early nudity. We get some titties from 1934. You better believe that shit's gone by the next year when the Hays Code is put in place. But yeah, we get some old black and white titties in this thing, and it's so blurry. In fact, I was just shocked I saw some titty because I was like, no, I didn't see some titty, did I? And I had to rewind it, and I was like, yeah, that was titty. I saw some titty right there. Dwayne Espers, like I said, this was an independent film. He financed it himself, and then he took it out on the roadshow circuit. This is where basically you just took your film town to town, just any place that would play it, and play it. Kind of the early kind of prelude to like grindhouse films, I guess, or at least the display wise. And I guess really, with the content of this movie, it would fit right in as being a grindhouse film. The movie is called Maniac. However, when he first took it down the road, it didn't do that well. So he took it back and changed the name to Sex Maniac. And guess what? He made money. And it became pretty successful, actually. If I'm not mistaken, I guess this is his most successful film he would ever have. So he Orson Welles himself and kind of blew his load in the very first attempt here. But yeah, Maniac would become his highest grossing movie. I'm sure. I could be a little bit wrong on that, but I think I read that. Anyways, personally, I don't know. With the exception of the novelty of seeing some old titties in this movie, it wasn't that good of a movie, and it was just boring. Like, I don't know. I kept finding myself kind of nodding off during this thing, and I wasn't that big on it. I did watch it all. I didn't, I don't think I fell asleep through it. And I would wake up and rewind it back where I remember seeing it. And I watched this whole thing, but this was a rough watch. It has a 3.7 on IMDb, but oddly enough, an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I kind of feel like I am IMDb on this one. And the rest of the Retro Horror Academy is Rotten Tomatoes because, like I said, they made it number one. But that's just my opinion right there. So, for a quick, brief recap of 1934 in the world of horror, we have inducted John Barrymore and Conrad Veidt into the Horror Hall of Fame. At number 6, Chloe, Love is Calling You. At number 5, El Fantasma del Convento. At number 4, Black Moon. At number 3, and winner of the Bronze Skull Award, The Telltale Heart. Number 2, winner of the Silver Skull Award, The Black Cat. And number 1, Golden Skull Award, Best Horror Film of 1934, cough, cough, Maniac. I forgot to mention that Telltale Heart was a British film. Yeah, and everything else was U.S. I'm pretty good about getting the countries of origin for these movies out there, but I forgot. But that's all we got for this year in 1934. So join us next time as we tackle the next year, 1935. So, I'm Daniel Richardson. This is the Retro Horror Academy, and you're dismissed.